on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Making headlines first at 9. Diplomatic ties. 7 new agreements inked between Sri Lanka and Qatar during President Maithripala Sirisena's visit. New avenues for vocational training. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe assures the new secondary and tertiary education system. Holding elections in January. Chairman of the Election Commission Mahinda Deshapriya says subject minister should first issue the gazette. Equitable tax system. Tax experts call for improvements and corrective measures for revenue collection via Budget 2018. Making headlines overseas. Leading a three-party government. Jacinda Ardern sworn in as 40th Prime Minister and promises a government that is empathetic and strong. Bring you news from home and across the world. This is First at 9, another Derana 24/7. Good evening, I'm Katharina Chang. Now on to our top story tonight. President Maithripala Sirisena, who is engaged in a two-day state visit to Qatar, met with the Emir of Qatar and held a bilateral discussion. 7 new agreements were signed between the two countries. President Maithripala Sirisena visited the Emir Diwan Palace this morning and met the ruler of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. During bilateral discussions, special attention of the Emir of Qatar was drawn towards the requests made by President Sirisena on forming a partnership to operate Sri Lankan airlines. 7 MOUs were inked in their presence, including one on visa-free entry for diplomats to state officials. In the meantime, President Maithripala Sirisena also met the Prime Minister of Qatar, Abdullah bin Nasir bin Khalifa Al Thani today. President Sirisena brought the Qatari Premier up to speed on investment opportunities in the sector of power and energy in Sri Lanka. President thanked the Prime Minister for the assistance given to Sri Lanka on the global platform as well as for employing Sri Lankans in various fields in Qatar. In the meantime, the President met Sri Lankans living in Qatar last evening.
Sri Lankans living abroad get information about Sri Lanka via internet and social media. I clearly say that Sri Lanka is different to that portrayed through Facebook and websites. There is a question whether media freedom in Sri Lanka is used with discipline. As I know, what you often see via internet is stories of the country being divided, destruction of Buddhism, or removal of all army camps in the north. We established the new government on the 8th of January 2015 with the blessings of Sri Lankans in Sri Lanka as well as from around the world. Therefore, our intention is to uplift our country to enable Sri Lankans attain acceptance and dignity within the country as well as abroad.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today divulged government's plan to introduce an advanced secondary and vocational education system to the country, similar to that implemented in Finland. The Premier spoke of the move at an event held in Colombo. Annual prize-giving ceremony of the Devi Balika Vidyalaya was held under the patronage of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today.
We will take several important steps with regards to the education system. The first is to make the 13 years of education compulsory. But not all students aspire to get selected to universities. That's why I and the Education Minister went to Finland to discuss receiving funds which will help us in implementing its advanced secondary and vocational education system here in Sri Lanka. This will help students to professionally equip themselves. It's much valuable than having a degree. This system will soon be established here in Sri Lanka.
Chairman of the Election Commission Mahinda Deshapriya reveals the possibility of holding local government elections in January 2018. if the subject minister issues the relevant gazette notification by November this year. He made these remarks following a meeting with several political party representatives today.
A meeting was held between the chairman of the Elections Commission and members representing several political parties at the Election Commission today.
We discussed how to implement necessary laws if elections are to be held. No, he cannot say that because he has to wait for the Gazette notification, but we must prepare for it. We believe that the election will be held in January. They are ready for it if the minister issues the Gazette. The promise made by the subject minister will surely be fulfilled. Chairman of the Election Commission said he will be able to hold the election if the Gazette notification is issued before 4th of December. The JVP will not accept any further delays to elections.
Later, the chairman of the Election Commission expressed views to media.
There was a problem as to when the election will be held. I explained that if Minister Faiza Mustafa issues the Gazette notification, including the respective number of councillors per electorate by the first week of November, we will be able to hold elections in January. This Gazette notification is the main reason for the delay in elections.
Chairman of the Public Representations Committee of Constitutional Reforms, Lal Vijayanayake, charges that the Sri Lanka Bar Association declared their views on the steering committee report following a deceptive meeting. President of the Sri Lanka Bar Association, U.R. De Silva, however, refuted the particular allegations during a media briefing today.
The Executive Committee of the Bar Association, which consists of 950 members, called this special meeting on a Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. Most of these members are stationed out of Colombo and they couldn't make it to the meeting at that time because of their work in courts. This was a strategically planned meeting which was only attended by 46 members. And then they went to public giving the impression that even the lawyers are against the constitution. This is an unfortunate situation and it is clearly trickery.
Make a one job, make a pro job.
The Executive Committee meeting that we convened recently was done according to our constitution, and we informed all members beforehand to give them time to attend the meeting. Whoever was interested participated in it, and all of them expressed their views. So the ones who didn't attend the meeting do not have the right to talk about what we discussed. If someone is saying that we are against the constitution, understand that it is not so. We only need a very clear constitution.
We know that this is not the draft of the constitution. This is only a document submitted to the people to go through it and thereafter give their suggestions.
Meanwhile, the president of the Sri Lanka Bar Association also expressed the bar's stance on the constitutional reform process at a media briefing today.
We believe that certain people purposefully misinterpret facts about the proposed constitution. The bar is of the stance that will support a constitution that the majority agrees with and one that will protect the country and its unitary status.
Leader of the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumana, Professor G.L. Piris, points out that the government should consider the comments made by Special UN Rapporteur on Transitional Justice, Pablo de Grief, recently as a warning over the country's war crime allegations. Addressing a media briefing convened by the joint opposition, the professor added that de Grief calls for immediate investigations into allegations of war crimes in Sri Lanka.
Pablo de Grief identifies statements made by the government where it says that it will not let action be taken against war heroes over war crimes allegations as hollow remarks. He states that the case which is filed in Brazil against Jagat Jayasuriya is just the beginning and it will not stop there. He says that the Sri Lankan government is powerless in protecting war heroes due to the promise given to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. De Grief demands that Sri Lankan government immediately investigate war crimes allegations.
Thoughts were also expressed on the interim report produced by the Steering Committee of the Constitutional Assembly.
What is this interim committee report based on? Who prepared it? Is anyone who harbours country's patriotic ideals involved in it? No. It is prepared by representatives of non-governmental organisations. This is an essential step of the new constitutional process. A debate will be held in Parliament. Thereafter, the Cabinet will prepare the draft bill in accordance with the facts raised in Parliament. That draft bill will then be taken up in the Constitutional Assembly, which will be followed by another debate. Subsequently, it will be tabled in Parliament in an attempt to gain a two-thirds majority.
Several politicians, meanwhile, also expressed views on the interim report produced by the Steering Committee of the Constitutional Assembly.
There is a possibility of abolishing the executive presidency. It is completely dangerous. The executive presidency should be abolished only after the 13th Amendment to the Constitution is abolished. The opposition should immediately resign from the committees at the Constitutional Assembly. This was tabled in Parliament for the public to express their opinions. The monks are expressing their thoughts. Organisations and individuals are expressing themselves. This should be allowed. We shouldn't lose our temper over the matter.
It is every citizen's wish to have a government of accountability with good practices. The World Bank Group indicates voice and accountability, political stability, absence of violence, government effectiveness, regulatory quality, rule of law and control of corruption as indicators of measuring the concept of good governance in a country. However, Kenyan academic and expert on constitutional law, Professor Yash Palgai highlights integrity as the core element for a country striving to achieve good governance through a constitution.
If you have a commitment to accountability, the constitution can help by providing the norms of integrity, efficiency, commitment, so that the people in public service, whether politicians or as civil servants, have to abide by and to be qualified for office. I mean, you cannot be a parliamentarian if there's record of corruption. We use the word integrity all the time. And then, of course, creating people awareness that this practice is terrible. And I think through these kind of mechanisms, one can begin to develop a culture of integrity. Politics are very much geared towards the capture of the state. Once they have captured the state, they become billionaires overnight. So it's all the more important that we have integrity as the basic norm of the state.
The Government Medical Officers Association told media today that they expect the President to provide an acceptable solution for the Saitam issue. Meanwhile, members of the People's and Students' Campaign Against Saitam staged a silent protest in front of the Fort Magistrates Court.
Members of the People's and Students' Campaign Against Saitam commenced a silent protest at around 8:30 this morning in front of the Fort Magistrates Court. The protest was staged demanding the release of the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Lahiru Veerasekara, and convener of the Inter-University Bhikkhu Federation, Tampiti Sugatananda Thera. When the case was taken up, however, the Fort Magistrate ordered Lahiru Veerasekara and Tampiti Sugatananda Thera be further remanded until the 31st of this month. In the meantime, several politicians expressed their views on the current situation surrounding Saitam.
I have given a report. The current shareholding structure of Saitam and the current management structure should be abolished. What is the problem? And I also say that there should be a considerable amount of non-governmental education. That is our policy. It should also have proper standards. No one can stop medical degrees being granted after it is gazetted, not even the government. If the Medical Council does not accept it, the relevant minister can order the Medical Council to accept it.
The GMOA also expressed their views on the matter.
If coming into Parliament despite losing the election is possible, some believe that anything is possible. I think they should be treated by a specialist doctor.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry investigating the controversial bond issue will resume hearings on the 2nd of November after it received an extended mandate yesterday. Let's now take a look at other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
Police say that the IGP is not in any way influenced to cease investigations into alleged threat levels against Anika Vijaysurya, a whistleblower in the bond investigation. Police media spokesperson Ruwan Gunasekara said the investigation into alleged threats continue without obstruction. A tense situation arose between supporters of the Ceylon Workers' Congress and members of Workers' National Front adjacent the Hatton Police last night. The situation worsened due to a protest by Ceylon Workers' Congress over the name change of the Tondaman Vocational Training Centre in Fullbank, Hatton. A three-wheeler heading towards Parakaduwa collided head-on with a fuel bowser which was heading towards Badulla from Colombo. 2 men and a woman died after being admitted to the Ratnapura General Hospital. Another person is currently receiving treatments in the intensive care unit.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Ardern 24/7.
A prominent tax expert highlights that it is important for the government to consider improving the country's tax collection mechanism, given the differential tiers in society, saying such demands a tax collection method which has to be unequal due to varying levels of earning. Tax consultant Ardern also pointed out that Budget 2018 should be well aligned towards the government's target of achieving a tax to GDP ratio of 18 to 20% by year 2020.
The revenue about 2 years ago hit a rock bottom about 10.7%. Now is around 15%, and the government is also focusing on the mix of revenue, where direct taxation will be given greater emphasis and focus, but the indirect taxation have a greater impact on the masses. If you want to have 4% deficit tax to GDP, budget to GDP 4%, our tax revenue will have to reach about, the deficit of the budget should be around 300 to 400 billion rupees, which will be a tough task.
Speaking further, he pointed out that the newly enacted Inland Revenue Act needs improvements and corrective measures via Budget 2018.
Unless they tax the informal sector, people who are not taxed already, and expand the base. Otherwise, there is always a feeling that the people in the tax net, in the formal net, is being overtaxed. And when that happens, there is harassment. So it is a challenge not only for the government, but it's also for the Department of Inland Road. You see why the informal sector is still huge is 2 reasons. One is there are revenue officers who are good and competent, but they are feeling that some of them are too extreme on the law and they don't give a fair situation to the tax. On the other hand, there are officers who are subject to malpractice. All these 2 things pushes away the taxpayer.
The tax consultant is also of the view that Sri Lanka must consider implementing an unequal form of taxation in order to bridge existing differentials in society.
There may be some good features in the existing law has been overlooked or missed in the new. 70-75% of the economy, entrepreneurs carry on their business as a sole proprietor partnership. They cannot be expected to pay at 24% when the company is carrying on the similar business to be paid at 28%. The company is carrying on the similar businesses to be paid at 14%. So that is a correction that they will have to do, otherwise there will be a big huge anomaly. Another new thing is interest on foreign currency deposits. It has been exempt for a long period of time. Now the exemption is removed. I don't know whether it will have an adverse effect on our foreign currency and holding of foreign currency here. I believe some people, expatriates who are holding monies, there is an urge to take it back.
Chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Dhammika Ranatunga, says although the entity is running at losses, no decision has been taken to increase fuel prices. He said this responding to questions raised by journalists during a media briefing in Colombo today.
It is important to take into consideration the inconveniences that could be experienced by the people through an increase in fuel prices. Therefore, our entity will not move towards such a measure until discussions are held and decisions are taken. We have an outstanding debt of 300 billion rupees. State institutes are indebted to us by more than 60 billion. If we get that money, we can work easily.
Sri Lankan shares touched a near 3-month closing high today as investors picked up bank and diversified shares. The Colombo stock index finished 0.28% firmer at 6,633, its highest close since July 31st. Let's cross over to Meshi Fernando from the Colombo Stock Exchange for a detailed report.
Top 5 gainers of the day were Amaya Leisure, Lucky Lanka Non-Voting, Standard Capital, Ceylon Investments and Tesagro, while the top 5 losers were PC Pharma, Adam Capital, Kotmale Holdings, Amana Life and Asia Capital. Today's foreign purchases were 614.49 million rupees and foreign sales were 578.36 million rupees.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Jacinda Ardern took oath as the 40th Prime Minister of New Zealand today and says she will lead a government that is active, focused, empathetic and strong. Ardern is the New Zealand's 3rd female Prime Minister and its youngest leader since 1872.
The 37-year-old leader says her Labour New Zealand First Greens coalition had a responsibility to lead a strong and empathetic government for all New Zealanders. She will lead a 3-party government and official coalition formed with the Nationalist New Zealand First Party and a confidence and supply agreement with the left-leaning Greens. Her Labour Party won fewer votes than the Conservative National Party, but New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters gave them the seats to take power.
This is a democracy. Of course, not everybody voted for us. But we vow that regardless of who you voted for, regardless of where in Aotearoa, New Zealand you live, this will be a government for all New Zealanders.
Indonesian authorities say at least 47 people are killed and dozens injured in an explosion and fire at a fireworks factory near the Indonesian capital, Jakarta. The blaze took hold at around 9 a.m. local time at an industrial complex west of capital, Jakarta. Bodies are still being recovered from the building and police say they are still trying to locate 60 employees who worked there. According to international media, by the time of the incident, there were 103 workers at the factory. Let's now cross over to a short commercial break.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Derana 24/7.
The Selection Committee of Sri Lanka Cricket today, led by its chairman Graham Lebroy, spoke on the national selection policy. Addressing a media briefing at the SLC, Lebroy also touched on plans targeting the next World Cup.
What's most important is the Minister of Sports have indicated that every player should be subjected to a fitness test, and if the player passes, only that the names will be given to us by Sri Lanka Cricket for selection. They have to pass through that. Then we basically ask the coach what sort of team he wants, and then we sit with the coach and the captain together and select the team. So So we want to have it transparent as much as possible, and that's how we did select the team for the Pakistan tour.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the selection committee also spoke on the long-term plans of Sri Lanka cricket aimed at the upcoming World Cup.
We have a long-term plan. Of course, most of the countries do center around the World Cup and the T20 World Cup. We have started the process. Like you said, we have played close to about 46, 47 players in the last 18 months. And not many players have got a decent run to play. Some have played 2 games, 3 games and been left out. So it will be very unfair by the players if we try to identify them. We have the Indian tour, which is a complete tour. So we are taking that into consideration. At the end of the Indian tour, we'll have a very good idea, a fair idea on who will be playing in the ODI format, and that will be towards the World Cup.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Let's now cross over to Dhammika Kanayaka at the Derana Weather Centre with your forecast for the next 24 hours.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, the coastal regions of the country is yet again set to have warmer weather, especially temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius expected in the eastern and southeastern areas by midday. Central hills, as usual, will stay much cooler. Despite the high temperatures, the eastern part of the island is also in for some heavy rains, with Trincomalee and Batticaloa in particular. Most parts of the country, however, will experience some showers over the course of the day. That's your weather, and up next is the City by City forecast.
And before we go, we'd like to take you to Thailand, where massive crowds gathered to observe the second day of the elaborate 5-day funeral for their late king Bhumibol Adulyadej, who ruled the country for 70 years, a man who was once the world's longest-serving monarch. The late Thai king's funeral took a year to organize and will culminate with his cremation at the Royal Crematorium, a 3-tier, 50-meter high golden funeral pyre. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.